The mud doesn't warn you when it's about to swallow the road. On the BR-230, also known as the Trans-Amazonian Highway, the rain falls heavily, seeps into the ground, weakens the base, and turns kilometers of road into an unstable corridor, where the expected flow gives way to waiting. Trucks move forward at a slow pace, tires slip, precarious bridges become overloaded, and time, which should be predictable, simply disappears in the middle of the journey. It's in this environment that an inevitable question arises. Is the problem with the Trans-Amazonian Highway just the lack of pavement, or is it the absence of a solution capable of taking on the Amazon? This is where CCR, roller compacted concrete, comes in, a technology we've already explored here on the channel, and that appears in the card of this video. But applying this method to a highway over 4,000 kilometers long isn't just a technical decision, it's a direct confrontation with the climate, logistics, and the territory. Stay with us for the next few minutes and learn about the challenges, the feasibility of RCC, as well as ongoing projects and works that are helping with this transformation. The BR-230, known as the Trans-Amazonian Highway, is one of the largest highways in Brazil, connecting Cabedelo in Paraíba to Labria in Amazonas, along a route that stretches over 4,000 kilometers. 1,000 kilometers and crosses completely different realities. Along its route, the highway starts from well-developed urban areas and moves into regions where infrastructure is still limited. The logistics are complex and the environment imposes constant restrictions on engineering. In practice, it is a national integration corridor, but with a critical characteristic: discontinuity. There are paved and functional stretches while others still face mud bogs, interruptions, and severe traffic conditions, especially during the Amazon rainy season. This means that the Trans-Amazonian Highway does not function as a continuous road, but as a fragmented system where each stretch responds differently to the same environmental conditions. And it's precisely this fragmentation that reveals a deeper point. The real challenge of the BR-230 lies in the lack of sufficient construction works or in the choice of solutions applied along it. The Trans-Amazonian Highway began in the 1970s with a clear objective: to integrate Brazilian territory through a major highway corridor. The idea was to connect isolated regions, stimulate economic development, and promote the occupation of scarcely explored areas. In fact, it was an ambitious proposal, almost symbolic. It reflected a time when infrastructure meant territorial expansion and the presence of the state. However, the execution did not match this ambition. The initial construction of the road happened relatively quickly, but the paving did not progress at the same pace. Over the decades, budget limitations, changes in political priorities, and the environmental challenges of the Amazon itself interrupted the continuity of the project. The result was a highway that remained incomplete in several sections. Meanwhile, the demand only increased, cargo transportation intensified, population settled along the route, and economic activities began to depend directly on the highway. What was once a promise of integration became an essential infrastructure, but without the necessary base to support this function. And the problem changed in nature. It was no longer just the absence of pavement. It was the inadequacy of the construction approach of applying traditional solutions. In a territory with unstable soils, heavy rains, high humidity, and low maintenance capacity, it began to show its limits. The pavement degraded quickly, maintenance became constant, and the cost stopped being a one-off expense and became a recurring cost. It was at that moment that the question changed. It was no longer when to pave, but how to build a highway that works in a territory that constantly works against it. Paving the Trans-Amazonian Highway doesn't just mean applying a new layer over the BR-230. It means choosing a technology capable of withstanding heavy rain, saturated soil, heavy traffic, long logistical distances, and limited maintenance capacity. The motivation for discussing RCC isn't simply to swap asphalt for concrete, it's to answer a deeper technical question. How do you pave and maintain a highway in a region where heavy rain, heat, difficult logistics, and limited maintenance availability make conventional pavement more vulnerable? In fact, RCC doesn't replace all traditional techniques, but it changes the approach in critical sections. Instead of a flexible structure that is more prone to deformations, it creates a rigid layer, compacted with vibratory rollers, capable of distributing loads better and reducing rutting. The application requires low water content, controlled spreading, continuous compaction, a well-executed base, stable subbase, efficient drainage, and rigorous quality control. In the Amazon, this is crucial because water is not just a design detail, it is the main agent of highway degradation. Today, the Trans-Amazonian Highway operates as a fragmented corridor, divided into multiple work fronts, with different levels of progress, priority, and complexity. In recent years, the National Department of Transport Infrastructure, DNIT, has focused its efforts on three pillars. They are replacement of critical structures, recovery of degraded segments, and gradual advancement of paving in strategic sections. In Pará, one of the most emblematic examples is the bridge over the Xingu River at kilometer 571 of BR 230 between Anapu and Vitória do Xingu. With about 700 meters and an investment of 405.6 million reais, the project has already surpassed 50% completion, with progress in the structural phases and the superstructure. More than just a crossing, this bridge eliminates an operational bottleneck, replacing the reliance on ferries with a permanent solution. This shows that the Trans-Amazonian Highway doesn't just depend on pavement, it depends on structural continuity. Another important development is the replacement of wooden bridges with permanent reinforced concrete structures. Recently, authorization was granted for the construction of 15 concrete bridges on the BR 230 in Pará, eliminating fragile bridges that interrupt traffic and compromise the reliability of the highway. One of the most sensitive stretches of the entire Trans-Amazonian Highway lies between the municipalities of Rurópolis and Medicilândia in Pará. During the rainy season, the road's passability becomes critical, affecting cargo, basic services, and the daily lives of local communities. The precarious situation led the Federal Public Prosecutor's Office to take legal action, requesting urgent interventions. In Amazonas, the challenge is even greater. The distance from major urban centers, combined with harsh environmental conditions, increases both the cost and the time required for construction projects. One example is the maintenance contract for about 126 kilometers, with investments exceeding 180 million reais focused on the functional recovery of the highway. These contracts show that keeping the Trans-Amazonian Highway operational is just as challenging as building it. And this is where roller compacted concrete comes back into focus. On a highway where maintenance is expensive, slow, and difficult to mobilize, a more durable solution can mean reliable road access, logistical predictability, and less dependence on emergency interventions. However, the challenge is proportional. The production of the material needs to be nearby or very well planned. The application must take place within a controlled window, the compaction needs to be exact, and the drainage needs to work. That's why roller compacted concrete should not be seen as an isolated substitute, but as part of an integrated system. What we see today on the Trans-Amazonian Highway is this process evolving, a territory where engineering is still adapting to real conditions and where each technical choice defines not only the durability of the pavement, but the functionality of the entire highway. To understand the impact of this discussion around the BR 230, it's necessary to bring engineering to a comparable scale. Projects like Line 4 Yellow of the São Paulo Metro surpass the mark of 1 billion reais per kilometer, reflecting an extreme level of technical complexity, urban interference, and geotechnical control. In practical terms, a single kilometer of this project is equivalent to about 13,000 economy cars, considering an average value of 75,000 Rs per unit. In the case of highways, the logic is different. Traditional paving in Brazil varies, on average, between 3 million Rs and 10 million Rs per kilometer. In more complex projects, such as highway widening projects in regions with difficult terrain, this value can reach 12 million or 18 million Rs per kilometer, a difference that can multiply the cost per kilometer several times. These numbers also mean that every 10 kilometers can represent something between 400 to 1,300 brand new economy cars. By the way, this is where roller compacted concrete comes into the discussion. In general, solutions with roller compacted concrete may have a higher initial cost than flexible alternatives, especially because of logistics, materials, and quality control. The payoff comes over the life cycle: greater durability, less deformation, and potential reduction in maintenance interventions. In practice, it's the difference between spending less to build or spending less over the course of decades. If applied strategically, roller compacted concrete can transform the operational logistics of the Trans-Amazonian Highway, making the road more predictable, stable, and efficient over time. Fewer interventions mean shorter travel times, greater logistical reliability, and reduced costs for cargo transportation. According to the National Transport Confederation, CNT, inadequate pavement conditions significantly increase the operational costs of road transport, which can exceed 30% in more critical scenarios. In a scenario of broader application, the gains could be significant, especially for isolated regions, which would have greater integration with consumer markets and production centers. But the challenge is just as great, because the progress is not only in the material, it's in the way of thinking about the highway. The Trans-Amazonian Highway doesn't just need pavement, it needs engineering that can work with the terrain. Roller compacted concrete emerges as a relevant alternative in this context, offering greater resistance and predictability. However, it is not a standalone solution. The real challenge lies in the integration between design, execution, and maintenance. Because in the end, it's not just about building a highway, but making sure it works every day in any condition. Thank you for watching this video until the end. What do you think about the application of roller compacted concrete technology on the Trans-Amazonian Highway? Of course, every kilometer paved this way means a considerable investment, but in the medium to long term, it would definitely pay off. What do you think about that? Or do you disagree? What would be a way to fix this problem we've been facing for decades? Leave your opinion here in the comments. I'll stop here for now. Take care, and see you in the next video.